Welcome, everybody, to the Friar Talk podcast. Today, we are going to be recapping a big-time sweep over the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, Padres came in very, very short-handed and were able to complete a sweep, and now they're sitting half a game back from the Giants. They're in second place, and they have the second-best record in the NL. So, overall, in my opinion, it was a huge win. You're pretty short-handed. You have a lot of guys that are getting called up from AAA and are starting games. And then you have a lot of guys step up and really come up big time. You had Austin Nola, who I think was the player of the series when you kind of look at his overall numbers. And he was struggling and completely turned around his season. You had ha-seong Kim, who gets put in to play shortstop, makes some absolutely fantastic plays defensively, has a home run, draws a couple walks. But overall, just a really good series by a lot of ball players on this team. And I'll let you start out, Isaac, but what do you think, man? What was just your overall thoughts on this kind of series?
It's a really good series when you win with, a couple of AAA guys. You're missing your superstar player, and then you're missing, Eric Hosmer, who's also key. He's been a really key component in bringing in a lot of runs. Will Myers, we obviously know, is one of the biggest power bats in our lineups. And then Jerickson Profar he's kind of been a constant getting on base, he's kind of like the player you think of, get him in, like get him on, get him over, get him in. He's been that kind of guy. But really good series. I think Matt and I were both on board with winning one game would be cool, but getting the sweep was absolutely something I did not expect. Really stellar hitting. The hitting is something I did not expect. Very great hitting. I think a guy that, needs to be mentioned absolutely is Trent Grisham. Ends this series batting 301, had an amazing play in the first inning of yesterday that probably saved 2 runs. And what was kind of starting to look like a rocky outing for Ryan Weathers, but luckily Ryan Weathers settled down, and Weathers in the Met piggyback is, looking really good, and I'm really on board with it, giving us some really good quality starts together. And overall, just a really good series. Very happy with the outcome, and I think this might lead to a nice hot streak for the Padres.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're talking about this series and, this Lamet coming in second, and then you have Miguel Diaz who comes in after Paddock too. Like that kind of combination has been something that we kind of talked about it potentially happening early on this year, and we didn't really expect the Padres to go with that. But I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's a really good tactic. I think that maybe if we see Mackenzie Gore called up, that's what they'll do with him. Maybe he comes in after Chris Paddock. I mean, that would be kind of a nasty combo. Also love when it's righty lefty too, just because you kind of get a different feel for it. Because Ryan Weathers and Dinelson Lamet win in very different ways, and I just kind of like that. And then if you have Chris Paddock and Mackenzie Gore, same kind of thing there. So I mean, and Miguel Diaz, not to say anything bad on him. I mean, he's done a great job doing it. I don't think he's allowed to run yet this year in a couple outings where he's come in and pitched a few innings and looked really good. But you also we brought up we didn't really bring up much about the Friday's game, but Friday you had Joe Musgrove come in there, get out of a couple tough jams, doesn't allow a run, and then you had Machado who came up with a couple clutch hits. I think the biggest thing about this series was probably just the patience on offense. I think there was a record set at Petco Park, so that was huge, a walk record. And besides that, I mean, last night on the Sunday Night Baseball game, you had 2 guys get walked in, and you don't see that much. The Matt Vasgersian and that broadcasting crew is talking a lot about how patient the Padres lineup is and how they're probably the most patient lineup, and then they generate the most hard contact. And we've definitely been frustrated, when they let fastballs go down the middle. But if they start connecting on those fastballs, that's where it looks completely different. So overall, I'm very, very happy with this series.
Yeah, with that whole, being patient at the plate, hard hit contact. Well, they're making that much hard hit contact because they're really waiting on their pitch. We do see a lot of fastball. We were seeing a lot of fastballs go by. I didn't really see a lot of fastballs go by this past series. But they're just getting their pitch and they're taking advantage of it. Especially this series, we saw Austin Nola made some really great contact, had a really good series. Manny brought in a lot of RBIs, had a good series. Trent Grisham, I brought up, had a really good series. Dude, even Tommy Pham had a pretty good series. So that's a W to me. And credit to Tommy Pham. They put him in the cleanup spot, and not exactly the guy we want to see at cleanup. And he didn't do an amazing job, but he did a good job there, especially considering the circumstances. He was okay, and he played good defense. So but just really credit to the whole Padres lineup, the whole Padres pitching staff, because everyone came in this series knowing how shorthanded we were, and we were able to get out of there with a series win. Just remember, the Cardinals had the second best. I think it was the second best record in the NL, before we played them, and then we sweep them without all of our guys. And now we have the second best record in the NL. So really big series win. Coming into Colorado, who we just faced, and we handled pretty good. Took the series 2-1, I believe, if I remember correctly, 2-1. And hopefully we can maybe even sweep them too. That'd be nice.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking about this a while back. I want to say like last week, and we were saying, hey, look, the OPS is really down. I remember it was at like 27. I want to say it's up to 19th. The ERA is still first in the league. I mean, the stolen bases, they're like 12 or 13 above the second place team. You see that aggressiveness on the base pass really helping a lot. And I think that we're just kind of starting to see like who this team is. They're going to generate a lot of walks. Their offense is going to be kind of up and down, but they're going to have consistent pitching, and the pitching is going to be fantastic. And even with the pitching staff, they have a team 2.86 ERA, and they've dealt with a ton of injuries early on. So that's something I'm really excited to see. And then also, I don't know if you saw, but I know someone that was listening, one of the listeners commented like, "Hey, did you hear what Tingler said about Gore?" And basically, it sounded like if he gets more consistency, he's going to be called up probably relatively soon. And we were talking about that too. So you potentially have Gore maybe coming in if he's looking good. And you're just going to have a lot of guys like being able to produce from a pitching standpoint. So how much better do you think this pitching staff can be? I mean, it's already been the best in the league, but how much better do you think it can be?
Yeah, we're first in the league in ERA, and that's with Blake Snell looking the way he has. He hasn't exactly looked like the Blake Snell we know. Yu Darvish has been stellar. I just need to bring that up. I think everyone knows that Yu Darvish has been our guy. He's been by far our best pitcher, and I definitely think we're going to expect that out of you the entire season. Joe Musgrove has been he had a couple rocky starts, but he's been a good pitcher. I think his ERA is still below. It's still sitting around 3 something. So he's doing really well. And then obviously we're seeing Chris Paddock is starting to, get into the Chris Paddock that we wanted. Maybe we'll never get the Chris Paddock, the ace Chris Paddock that we all wanted. But I think Chris Paddock as 4-5 is going to be really good. And then we got the Weathers Lamet piggyback, which we brought up earlier. I'm in love with it. I really think it's a really good thing to keep. Weathers came out of the Arizona game unhealthy. So keeping Weathers and Lamet at 3 innings each, it's going to be key for their health because we need them down the road. They're going to be two really good, two really like key arms in our rotation. But it can get a lot better, and we're already first. And if Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, everyone except for you, because you're already doing really good. If everyone starts, especially Blake, if he starts giving us some quality starts, I think the sky's the ceiling for this rotation, and we could absolutely see ourselves statistically and on paper being the best rotation in baseball.
Yeah, and then you look at the bullpen too. Melanson has been completely lights out. He's right now he has the most saves in the league for out of any of the closers. I think by 3 he has 14. I think number 2 is 11. And then we brought up a lot of injuries. Kello's been out for a while. He came back and then allows a home run and then gets called out really quickly. Pomeranz has been out. So there's a lot of guys that are going to be coming in and really helping out this team. And also, we should expect there to be a couple trades that kind of, makes this pitching staff even stronger around the deadline. And also a lot of listeners are kind of asking like, hey, you guys should do some stuff about the trade deadline. We'll absolutely get to that. But just like we don't really know who they've been targeting yet. But when we kind of find out that, we'll go there. But I think that's going to do it for recapping this series. So thanks everyone for listening. If this is your first time checking it out, make sure to subscribe. And we'll be back tomorrow with the preview for the Rockies series. Or I guess later today with the preview for the Rockies series.